think you'd struggle to argue against carbon fibre being the ultimate frame material, at least in performance terms. I mean, it can be incredibly light, super stiff, amazingly compliant, and bonkersly aerodynamic. There are, though, of course, stacks of other frame materials out there from which you can build brilliant bikes. Steel, titanium, aluminium, magnesium. And then there's also wood. Now, I have seen wooden bikes before at bike shows and the like, but I've always kind of thought they were a bit of a novelty item. But are they? Today is the first day I'll ever have been actually able to ride one, and I cannot wait to find out what it's like. This is a Tumper Cycles GR1, and the frame, as you can clearly see, is made out of wood. But this is no delicate road bike built for nursing along smooth tarmac. This is a gravel bike. Now, it's made out of ash, which is a hardwood, actually one of the strongest out there, about on a par with oak, but a lot lighter. So this frame weighs just 1,800 grams. Yeah, that is considerably more than carbon, but about on a par with top-end steel. And unlike both of those other materials, this one treads far lighter on the planet. It is, of course, completely sustainable, and it requires a lot less energy to manufacture. Now, before I get to take this for a spin and see just how it feels to ride, fortunately for us, the owner of Tumper Cycles has delivered the bike in person. So I'm going to go grill him now and find out just what this is all about. Andy, you are a lifelong cyclist, right? Engineer by trade, furniture maker of 20 years, if I'm correct.
That's right.
So as qualified as anyone to make a wooden bike, but I guess the question is why?
Why wood? It's not the obvious choice for a bike frame, is it? I'm a woodworker and an engineer and a lifelong bike enthusiast, and an opportunity arose. I had a conversation with a potential furniture customer. He previously had written a book about bikes. It's All About the Bike, I think was the name of that book. I thought maybe we should build an ash bike. In the end, his publishers didn't agree. The publishing deadline was looming. We'd never built a bike before, and we built a piece of furniture. But in my mind, there was the idea for building a bike out of ash. And once an idea is in your mind, if you're a maker, then it tends to stay there. And so it happened over a period of about 2 years. I built myself an ash bike. It was a purely personal project. It was never intended as a business or as something for anyone else until I started riding it. And then I became slightly, some people would say, overly evangelical about it.
So how does it compare to another material like a steel or a carbon fibre in terms of the strength of it and the density of it?
So it does offer different properties. A lot of the properties of a frame, as you will know, are in the design of the frame itself, in the geometry of the frame, not necessarily in the material. Wood has unique properties at a microstructural cellular level. The cellular structure of wood is essentially a vast complex of spring damper combinations. So this frame is made up of a large complex of micro suspension systems, and that has the effect of damping the vibrations which come through the road and into the frame.
First impressions. Well, my very first impressions actually were that it feels kind of normal, in the sense that, having spoken to Andy at length about this bike, I still have this preconceived idea that it would feel like a wooden bike, but yet it doesn't. If I couldn't see what I was on, it would be a normal bike. Now, to give you a visual illustration of it, one of the first things I do when I get on a new bike is the shakedown test, which is completely unscientific, not even very objective, but I give the handlebars a little shimmy just to see what kind of torsional stiffness is in the front end of the bike. And this one is totally within the realms of a metal bike or a lightweight carbon bike. So on a stiffness perspective, it definitely doesn't feel weird. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, go! That must be at least 600 watts. And what about the kind of the stiffness and the density of it compared to a steel? So 1,800 grams for a frame.
Yeah,
it is comparable to a top-end steel frame.
Yeah, it is.
But how strong is it in comparison?
Well, obviously the density is a lot lower than steel, and that means that you can use a lot more of it without exceeding the weight of a piece of steel. So the wall thickness on these tubes varies between 5 and 6 mil depending on whereabouts it is. Obviously, with steel frames, you're looking at sort of 0.5, 0.8, that kind of thicknesses. So if you have a steel tube and a wooden tube, you can have a lot more wood. In other words, your wall thickness can be a lot thicker, the diameter can be a lot thicker for the same weight, for the same mass of material. It has a greater strength to weight ratio, and when you combine that with turning it into a tube, that magnifies that effect again. So it's a very suitable material for building bike frames from, which are essentially tubes.
What then about these famed vibration damping qualities? I've got to put a big caveat here and say these are completely my first impressions. I'm also using gravel tyres on here. Well, admittedly, I've got 60 PSI in them, but it definitely feels very kind of quiet, like, I mean, audibly quiet, but also in terms of vibrations coming up through the bike. Now, one way though that it does differ quite significantly from carbon fibre is what you'd call compliance, which is kind of different to vibration damping. It's a more pronounced flex. And I guess that's one thing you can't engineer into a wooden frame, or at least not at this stage. Whereas with carbon fibre, you stick a D-shaped seat post on there and you can actually visibly see it flex. Or some frames have it designed in to the seat tube and the seat stays, even up to 20 millimeters of movement. So whilst you've got this whisper-like vibration damping, it is perhaps more in line with a metal bike, like an aluminium bike or titanium bike, in terms of the compliance, which is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just what it is, I guess. So if you go crashing through potholes, you feel it, but the sort of finer vibrations that come out from rough surfaces like gravel or uneven tarmac, they're just not there as much. Man, it's bonkers. I'm riding a wooden bike. So how is it actually made then? Like, the fact that it's hollow, I guess I probably should have guessed, but I mean, I can see joins, I can see, like, is it like built in a modular system?
So these don't start as tubes. Unsurprisingly, they don't grow as tubes. The front triangle of this bike starts off as 2 triangles of jointed planks, jointed together with this jigsaw joint here, which locks those very firmly, securely, the end to end. Those are bonded with epoxy. The planks are also laminated so that the joints are staggered to give, so they effectively reinforce each other. Most of the machining is done on a CNC router. The front triangle starts off then, or becomes 2 machined half shells, which are then bonded together along the center line. And then after that, the rear triangle, the seat stays and the chain stays are bonded on. Chain stays are laminated out of 6 pieces of ash, which is formed on a former to give us the curves that we need. They come together then at this end in a non-wood component, which has been one of the most challenging aspects actually of building a wooden bike, which are the dropouts.
Is the design of the bike, the shape of the bike, a product of the properties of the wood, or have you got a bit of flexibility in terms of the look? I mean, could you, for example, make an aero wooden bike by sort of tailoring the tubes, making them into aerofoils?
You could do. There's no reason that the tubes need to be round. They will lose some strength if you change the profiles, because you start to introduce stress concentrations. A circular profile has no point on it that wants to act as a stress concentrator. If you start to focus into pointed sections, then you do start to create slight stress concentrations, but these are over-designed, and it's very easy to over-design it to make sure that's not a problem. This is intended as a gravel bike, and as such, I anticipate heavier loads, greater impacts and things on the frame. If I was designing an aero bike, I would be able to reduce the sections slightly of some of these members, and yes, change the profile. So they don't need to be circular section.
That's pretty cool. So actually you've kind of got almost the same degree of flexibility as carbon fibre, potentially, in terms of shaping and...
Yeah, yes, you do. Yeah, there really is very little limitation in the shape. As long as you're putting enough material in the right places, and you're joining the different components, the different elements of timber in the correct way, yeah, the shapes are hugely variable. What you are always going to be left with is the need to sweep these radiuses here. Again, the same about avoiding sharp changes of direction which cause stress concentrations. Here we've got these smooth curves which are avoiding those stress concentrators. So that's a detail that I would personally always want to maintain on a design.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. It's a gravel bike after all. I had to venture onto some gravel, and actually I'm really glad I did. Definitely adds a whole new dimension into that vibration damping qualities. And it's best illustrated by the fact that the front and the back of this bike feel quite different, in that the back of the bike is really forgiving and it does absorb the kind of the gravel, the bumps coming up from the trail. Whereas this fork, which is an Envy carbon fork, it's absolutely top quality fork, definitely still feels like it's translating more vibration. And that's partly because I've got the tyres pumped up to 60 PSI because I've been riding around the road. But the back doesn't feel like I've got 60 PSI in. It feels like I'm running about 35, which is a pretty significant difference. And testament to the wood, I guess. Well, what can you say? And like carbon fibre, if you change, I don't know, like the grain of the wood or the direction, you know, can you change the properties of the bike, or are you fairly fixed in terms of, you know, wood is obviously super strong in one direction and, you know,
yeah, no, you're right, you're absolutely right. One of the biggest challenges designing with wood is that wood is great, has great strength in tension along the grain. It's great bending. As long as the grain runs that way, it will bend. It's very stiff that way. But as soon as you start to go across the grain, that's when you get splits. So designing with the grain in the right orientation is absolutely crucial.
So how have you got the lateral stiffness then? If you've got the grain going down the down tube like that to mean that it's strong enough, how do you resist torsion? Or
that's where the oversizing comes in, and the wall thickness. Because you're right, picking up on that is something that very few people have done actually. So that twist is something which other manufacturers of wooden bikes have used carbon internal, a layer of carbon internally.
That's just cheating, isn't it?
Which does seem like cheating to me. Well, it's not cheating. I mean, you know, every way of building a bike is legitimate.
Yeah, well, and you did point out earlier
I wanted
as well
to build a wooden bike, and I don't think there's any need for carbon in there.
No.
And so far, I think I'm born out in that belief.
And what about the toughness of the material? I mean, how resistant is it to knocks and damage? I mean, could you put a dent in it, for example?
You could dent it. I'd rather you didn't. If that's all right.
Yeah, no, I'll try my best.
There's been a lot of product testing. There's been a lot of hard riding, although of course most dents don't tend to come when we're riding our bikes. Most dents come when we're taking them in and out of cars and things like that.
Well, that's it, or if you lay it down on some particularly pointy Welsh rocks.
Exactly. The ability to absorb shocks, which we discussed before, also means that makes it more resistant to denting. So whilst of course, yeah, you could damage it, you could bang it, it is more resilient to knocks than probably other frame materials.
Now, I'll confess, until today, I had never thought of wood as a performance material. I know humanity has made and continues to make incredible structures from it, but to my mind, in a sporting context, wood has always kind of meant blunt instruments like bats and clubs and sticks. But here, I mean, firstly, the scales don't lie. 1,800 grams for a frame is 1,800 grams for a frame, and it's not noodly. So maybe my prejudice about wooden bikes stems from the fact that there just haven't really been any, and perhaps more to the point, there haven't been any in pro racing, which for me, and I suspect a lot of you too, often serves like the barometer of success and credibility. I've got no romantic visions of a pro cyclist dancing up Mont Ventoux astride a wooden bike, but that's not actually what bike riding is to, well, probably virtually all of us. Yes, performance really matters, but owning a bike is an emotional thing, and that emotion might come from knowing that you have the fastest or the lightest bike, but it's also about the look of it and the feel of it and the craftsmanship and the ethos behind it, and perhaps, yeah, even the fact that it treads a little lighter on the planet. Certainly from talking to Andy, that side of things is really interesting. So he was explaining how a ton of processed wood contains within it about 5 or half a ton rather of carbon, whereas to make a ton of titanium releases about 4.5 tons of carbon into the atmosphere. So while it's small scale stuff, that can really matter to an individual, and increasingly I think it should matter to an individual. What's the future for Tumper cycles then? Well, Andy said at the minute production is limited to about 30 frames a year, but he's confident that it's scalable, and so they can and hope to be able to make more than that, both stock sizes and also completely bespoke frames as well. It's a premium product at the minute. It's about £3,000 or euros for the frame, but you can certainly see the time and the effort that goes into making them. Can't stop looking at it. Well, hopefully Andy's not going to mind if I don't bring his bike back for another hour or so. Quite frankly, I want to spend a bit more time on it before I hand it back. Be very interested to know what you think though. Take part in our poll over on the GCN app. Wooden bikes, hot or not? Would you ride one? Would you buy one? Please make sure, if you enjoyed this video as well, that you give it a big thumbs up. Right, I'm going to do a little bit more.